Dear Esther comes from this research project called the Chinese Room, which I run at the University of Portsmouth in the UK. And the whole basis of the research project is really to look at first-person gaming, but to try and look at those kind of questions which you can't really answer by just looking at commercial releases. Dear Esther was really kind of a simple question, really. I was interested in whether you could use this technology or this kind of setting, this kind of experience that you have when you play a first-person game, and use it to do nothing more really than tell a story. So what would happen if you effectively removed anything resembling traditional gameplay and were just left with an environment to explore and a story to be told in that space, and whether that experience would be something that would be kind of engaging or rewarding, or players would be interested in it. Really, before any of the story was written, we'd gone ahead and we'd drafted up and done a draft build of this environment, and started to have an idea of what kind of mood and experience we were going to go through. Really, the story kind of evolved quite organically as the environment was being built. About the same time the environment was being built, we commissioned Jessica Curry, who's the composer who works regularly on the Chinese Room projects. And she drafted most of the music before most of the story was there. So a lot of the writing was actually responding to the audio that was coming in, and quite a lot of the building adapted to that as well. So I'd hear something in the music and then kind of come back and look for a way of reflecting that in the visual build, which is, I suppose, not a standard way of doing things, but I really enjoy working that way. I love music anyway, and I think music has an incredible capacity to kind of emotionally steer and to add kind of real gameplay focus and this kind of thing. And to actually build to a soundtrack to a project which doesn't actually exist at that point is just really interesting to me. It's a really interesting experimental way of working. When we launched Dear Esther, I think realistically I wasn't expecting a great deal. I hadn't really kind of considered the whole notion of the games as art, or are games art, or should games be art, and all that kind of debate, which is, Dear Esther seems to have really quite sort of got into the thick of that and kicked off an awful lot of those debates online. But it wasn't actually a kind of an interest of mine at all at any point in that, and I still kind of find it quite a problematic discussion in that I'm not actually particularly sure I care. And if I do care, really, then it's kind of down to the players. And I do kind of agree with what Stephen Poole has said, that actually for a game to be good art, it's got to be a good game, and there's not this dialectic where one becomes the other, where you can excuse a poor game because it's good art. That's just, to me, as a player, as a gamer, that's kind of a bit of a cop-out, really. Having said that, it was a real surprise what happened to Dear Esther when we launched it, that it was adopted so fast by the modding community and was championed by so many gamers. And I think maybe we underestimated a little bit, even being gamers, kind of the appetite out there amongst kind of quite hardcore FPS community for very different types of experiences. People really understood what we were trying to do. They really seemed to just love the game, and really, we've got to a point where we're upwards of 30,000 downloads for this thing we built, which is really quite abstract and quite avant-garde and quite odd in places. And that's been done without a single penny being spent on PR. That's purely happening through word of mouth from the gaming community. And people are really thinking about it in an incredibly deep way, and it's great to be getting kind of people emailing in their versions of the stories and seeing these huge arguments going on online where somebody was saying, no, the avatar's definitely Paul, and someone else can come back and say, no, the avatar's definitely Esther, and it's definitely this and it's definitely that. I got into a conversation with someone where I told him what I thought kind of one possible reading of the story was, and he came back and told me I was completely wrong, and I obviously hadn't really played it and understood it properly, which I thought was fantastic. I mean, Dear Esther's a major success for us in terms of the research project. We came into this kind of making an argument that more academics, more researchers needed to develop. And that's not to say that you don't have academic developments out there. I mean, there's quite a lot of games. They tend to be kind of in the serious games field, or very political, or quite simple in a lot of ways. And you do have, sort of the astounding kind of higher education success stories like, The Bacular Drop or Flow. but there's still not enough of it, and there's not enough researchers looking to use practice-based or development-based work to answer some really, really interesting questions. And it's very hard for us working in game studies to always be reliant on what's produced commercially in order to answer questions. If we're going to go out and say, well, what is possible with this genre? What can we do with this genre? What will players accept? What will players tolerate? What will be seen as something new or innovative? Then really the kind of onus is on us to build as well. We should know how to use the technology. We teach it all the time. And we're not under the same kind of pressures that a commercial developer is. We're actually in a position where we can take risks that we know would be crazy for anyone actually working in business. We can do things which have no commercial value whatsoever. We can invest quite heavily in experimentation and even failure. And I really believe that it's not just that we have an opportunity to do that, but that we actually have something of a duty to do that. If we're going to say that we're people that are interested in this medium and how it develops, then really we have to be doing our bit to push it forwards as well. And I guess what I'm kind of pleased about is that we seem to have sort of semi-accidentally achieved that with Dear Esther, that it really does seem to be something which players and developers as well as researchers are taking very, very seriously, and it's quite a good way of kind of shouting about the value of doing that kind of research and why it's important. And so to me, that's a huge success of the project, on top of the kind of the success of it as a game in itself.